imagine Amazon like a giant grocery store. So we kind of imagine them like walking down these digital aisles. And we basically look for high demand keywords, right? Where there's a lot of traffic, but there's not great products on the shelf. And so how we train our families that come through our program is find the opportunities, and then we connect them with a manufacturer who can make those 5-star products. What we really specialize in is a private label, which is helping people launch their own brand. So they own the brand. It's their own label of the brand. We believe this gives you a lot more equity in the business. That's a recipe for success.
And of course, there always are those breakout stories that appears to seem like it happened overnight, but it's work and it's dedication and it is putting in time when you don't feel like it or sacrificing, and that is entrepreneurship. So I think having that mindset throughout is so important.
Stephen and Chelsey, welcome to the Everyday Millionaire podcast. I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to share and just help serve your audience in any way we can.
Well, the way to serve my audience is to discuss how the heck we can make some money in business. And, that's one of the many conversations. The premise of the show is seemingly ordinary, achieving extraordinary, and you both qualify in that context. So tell me a little bit about what you do, how you do it. How did you even get on the journey? So let's break those 3 questions into one. Let's start first off, when somebody walks up and says to one of you or both of you, what do you guys do? What's your answer to that question?
Yeah, we help moms launch online businesses, specifically e-commerce businesses. Now, if you're listening, you're not a mom, that's totally okay. If you have any interest in online business, that's really our journey. And so we just personally believe moms are a huge driver of impact in the world. When you ask a mom, hey, what would you do if I gave you $1 million? She immediately is like, I would give it away. She'll do some stuff for herself, but her first answer is always someone else. And I just think that's incredible. We love serving moms because they really do make the world an amazing place. So yeah, we help them launch e-commerce brands. 99% of people that come to us have no product ideas. They're not product inventors. They really are just looking to bring income to their family in some sort of alternative way. They're probably working a 9-to-5 job. They're probably like, okay, I need something else on the side. And so, yeah, that's what we help them do. And Chelsey's really good at telling our origin story. We can tell you how we got into it because it totally caught us off guard. It was very unpredictable. We were not looking to be e-commerce experts. Yeah. It really kind of fell in our lap.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's the entrepreneur's way, isn't it? And I got to say that, I'm always impressed with moms because they look at what their family needs and then they do their best to crack the code of how to deliver it without busting up the family and how they can operate. So I love it. So Chelsey, why don't you share with us what it was that got you started on this whole adventure that's turned out to be quite a business opportunity for you and what you've created for others?
Yeah, well, it's definitely been a huge adventure and a wild ride, something that neither one of us could have predicted. But for us, it really started in this tiny 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And there we worked. Our very first office together was upstairs in this loft. And you can't really tell, but Steven's super tall and he would hit his head going up in this spiral staircase. But
yeah, you had to duck to get to your desk, it was our humble beginnings, for sure.
Yes, definitely. And we were actually in the wedding industry. So that little loft upstairs, we had our 2 computers working side by side, editing away. We were in the wedding industry. And I feel like many businesses, there's really high seasons where, cash flow is coming in and you're traveling a lot and working really hard. And there's really slow seasons, or at least in the wedding industry during the winter months, people aren't getting married as often. And I remember working on different projects in those winter months and just almost feeling like the weight of the world on my shoulders, wanting to start a family one day, wanting to be entrepreneurs, but just looking at the type of business model that we were running, this specific service-based business, and just being like, this is not going to be sustainable when we decide to have a family. And it was really in some of those hard moments and hard conversations looking ahead and just saying well, what can we do to create extra revenue for our family so that we can be more picky and raise our prices and travel less? And it was really in those years that we lovingly now refer to as the spaghetti years. And it was like we were boiling water with spaghetti, throwing it up against the wall and seeing what sticks. And I would say mostly Steven was trying a lot of different internet things.
Chelsey was keeping the actual business running. I'm just goofing off on the internet, basically trying every webinar, buying every course, like every side hustle you could think of.
Yeah.
I was just like on the journey to figure it out, you know?
Yeah, and definitely in those years that, you know, the thing about online businesses and starting new things and investing in whatever you do is they all work. They all can totally work. But for us, there was one thing out of those businesses that we started that really we could tell and see that it was going to move the needle in the direction that we wanted to. And so for us, it was actually e-commerce. And we kind of landed into wanting to launch a product ourselves and figure that process out. And Steven had learned more about different platforms to put it on. And we were really looking for something, what is going to be the most passive for our family, where we don't have a bunch of boxes in our backyard or in the garage, and we're not packing and shipping, because we had done that a little bit. And so we really stumbled upon this program that Amazon does called Amazon FBA, Fulfilled by Amazon. And we had been doing it for a while. And honestly, it was mostly Steven who kind of saw like, this is going to work. This is going to work. And again, I was very skeptical, but I'll never forget, Patrick, when we were in the middle of our wedding season, we were totally burnt out, overworked, overextended, and we were working like 100-degree wedding outside. And as a wedding professional, you get like a 10-minute break to go stuff your face full of food before you have to pick up your camera again. And I'll never forget the moment where we just looked at each other and we're like, let's just check and see how much money our Amazon business made us today, which we would do from time to time. And I'll never forget looking at each other, pulling up the app and seeing that we had actually made more money in our Amazon business that day than we had photographing that wedding. Wow. And that every single winter season that I'd felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, I, for the first time, felt it began to lift. And it was like, wow, like we are actually on to something. Like this is the kind of impact and income that we want to be able to have and share. And so while Steven, I would say, was already what we call an Amazon evangelist, that was like that was my turning point, where I was just like, this is going to be the thing. Like I can see us working this job or phasing out of this job eventually. And this being the thing that allows us to be home on Saturdays with our babies and choosing what we get to do and having that choice. And so since then, it kind of launched us into sharing with anybody that would listen about the method that we had discovered, and now what we teach to this day.
Okay, so you've given me a lot to unpack here, and so, but you know, I'm kind of thinking from my listeners' point of view, and they're going, okay, yeah, but how long did that take you? Because everybody these days, you know, ultimately wants to do it quicker. So I know you've been at it a long time. You were on your learning curve, and there was a lot to unpack. Now, what you're doing in your own, the book that you collectively wrote and whatever teachings you are doing, you're shortening that learning curve. But how long have you been doing this? How long did you kind of how long did it start to take you to get some initial action going?
This was that story was probably 2017. I think by 2018, we had matched our wedding income, which was like a low six figures at that point. And so now it was like, I mean, as a young married couple, we didn't have kids. It was like making 200, 300,000 in a year. Like that was incredible, you know? So half of that was weddings, half of that was Amazon. And then we just kept kind of going from there, and really at that point launched the education business, and kind of like now we had 3 streams of income going. And this really led, I feel like 2019, we really started to see things ramp up on the Rainmaker side of things. So the business called the Rainmaker Family. And I just felt like it felt like too good to be true, miraculous timing. You know, we're faith-filled, and we were like, okay, it just is too good of timing, because 2020 happens. And all of our weddings get canceled, right? All of our friends in the wedding industry, their business goes away overnight, right? Like all these people are canceling weddings, postponing weddings.
But your Amazon business goes
exactly
through the
and
roof.
Guess what people are doing? They're at home shopping. Like they are like buying on Amazon at all-time highs. So we really saw just e-commerce take off, as well as people had big shifts in, oh, wait, my job I thought was super secure is not as secure in 2020. And so both those businesses just took off in 2020. We ended up hitting the Inc. 5000 list, the number 148 fastest growing privately held business in America in 2023. And so we just had like a hockey stick growth, but it really felt like it was kind of like years in the making of really grinding it out. And to like kind of answer your question for people who are like, I want to do e-commerce, or I've never thought about this, I would say, again, I'm big into like, go ahead, chase the passive income, but I don't like to use that word because it can attract people that don't want to do the work. And so it does take serious work to build this type of business. Of course, getting mentorship, training, like it's going to really help accelerate you, but I would commit 9 months to 2 years to this thing to really get it off the ground to a place where you can substantially see money coming out of the business. E-commerce just takes long, like it just takes time. I mean, relatively long. I'm like doing air quotes for people listening. 9 months is not that long in business to get something off the ground. But in this day and age where people are like, well, I just wanted to take a pill and have $10,000 a month coming in. It's not that,
Yeah. Well, like I don't like the term passive income because there's very few things that are passive. E-commerce not being passive for sure. You got to work it. There is a phrase that I often use, which is anything will work when you work it, but you have to. I mean, you have to work it to get it going. So let me ask you this question in terms of, the business model that you've created. For supporting others. You've got some education that you're providing, which is really shortening the learning curve for people. Is there a big investment up front for this kind of thing? And we don't need exact numbers, but is there an investment of capital in terms of the education or product? Where does the capital outlay come from?
Yeah. Similar to real estate, right? It's like there's so many ways to do things, right? You can put all your own money into a deal. You can also leverage other people's money, like maybe you want to do the work, but you have a friend who wants to front the money for the inventory, right? But e-commerce does take money to buy inventory. Of course, there's ways to step into it kind of gently. But I recommend, if you're going to go down this pathway mentally, $15,000 to $25,000 is a really great starting place as far as having money for some sort of mentorship, whether it's our program or another one. Amazon's just complex, just like real estate. You should get some sort of education or get it in a community of other people doing it. 100%. And then also having some money for inventory. 15 to 25K is a good like benchmark. Of course, we have people come in with, we had this couple come in. They're like, we were about to start a franchise. We saved up $100,000 and they were making inventory decisions that was scaring me. I'm like, are you sure? Like they dropped, I think 70,000 on their first inventory order. So you get extreme cases like that. But I mean, they were our fastest $1 million case study. Like they hit $1 million within, I think 2 years in their business. Yeah. Insane. But that's like, this is another level of risk. Then we have people coming in, bootstrapping it, using credit cards, like using their uncle's money who wants to invest. Like, there's the whole gamut. And so it's really kind of personal risk tolerance. And
So give me a high level overview of the business model. So I need capital, I'm buying inventory, but I'm not taking inventory. I'm not carrying inventory. So I'm drop shipping direct from Amazon. Is that the concept?
Yeah, there's this thing called drop shipping, and it's not exactly that, but it's close to that. So we are actually creating, there's a lot of ways to make money on Amazon. I guess we should start there. So you can make money selling books on Amazon. You can make money as a wholesaler where you buy, Clorox bleach and you sell it. You buy a name brand. What we really specialize in is a private label, which is helping people launch their own brand. So they own the brand. It's their own label of the brand. We believe this gives you a lot more equity in the business. If you do go to sell the business at some point, you kind of like have built a brand. So I guess the best analogy of like kind of our method, because I guess to backtrack how we figured this out is we launched a bunch of random products, kind of like followed some courses, some things. And we're like, okay, let's just like launch these random products. And one of them, if you're watching on YouTube, I know you got a lot of audio listeners, but if you want to look on YouTube, we have one on the shelf up here. It's a little wooden Japanese toy. It's like a yo-yo. It's called a kendama. And it's like you try to catch the ball on the cups. Okay. So we launched, this is like one of our second products on Amazon. And it was right around the time that fidget spinners took off. I know you have kids and you have grandkids. So I don't know if they were into the fidget spinner thing, but that thing was like hot in 2017, 2018. It took over the internet. Everyone wanted fidget spinners. And our toy was not a fidget spinner, but it was like fidget toy. It was kind of like a thing you keep on your desk, fidget around with it. And so we just started getting that overflow traffic of people searching for this popular thing. And ours started selling $500 a day, $1,000 a day on Amazon. And that's where we really were like, okay, we could reverse engineer this. How do we get in front of demand like that? And so to give you an analogy of how the whole kind of method works is imagine Amazon like a giant grocery store. Okay. And in a grocery store, you walk in, hopefully with intention, you know what you want, and you go down the aisles of the things you're looking for, right? You need milk, you go down the milk aisle. Same thing on Amazon. You go to Amazon and you search for things that you're looking for. We call those like digital aisles. And so what we do is now we look at, there's actually software that'll show you how much people are searching certain keywords.
Sure.
So we kind of imagine them like walking down these digital aisles. And we basically look for high demand keywords, right? Where there's a lot of traffic, but there's not great products on the shelf. So imagine you have 10,000 people walking down, the baby helmet aisle, right? Like Amazon searches are so specific, right? White baby helmet, right? So they're walking down this aisle, but there's not great products on the shelf. There's a bunch of 3-star products, a bunch of 4-star products. We just look for the traffic and then we put 5-star products on those shelves. And so how we train our families that come through our program is find the opportunities, and then we connect them with a manufacturer who can make those 5-star products, listening to the reviews of all the other products, right? The 3-star products, they'll tell you exactly what they didn't like, fix all those things and put that product on the shelf. That's a recipe for success. So that's kind of like the analogy of what we're doing. Mm-hmm. You don't have to invent something new. You're basically just looking for existing demand, using data to back it, improving the product, and then letting Amazon handle all the shipping. So that's the drop shipping part where it is your own brand, but we're using Amazon's warehouses to handle all the shipping and handling to the customers. So that way, the only product you're really touching is maybe a sample. When you're about to order your bulk order, you want to order a sample first to make sure it's good quality, make sure it's going to be a 5-star product. And then after that, you ship all your inventory to Amazon, and then they handle all the shipping from there.
So when we look at the model overall, Chelsey, and you looked at it, you were looking at it through a different set of eyes because you were working backwards from an outcome called one day we're going to have a family, and I want to be able to stay at home. I want to hang out with the kids, whatever that might be. We'll get to that in a minute. But when I'm hearing you, I don't know if I'm hearing this as a part-time thing. It feels like heavy lifting up front, get the wheel moving, get that flywheel going, and then it's a little bit less time and effort to keep the flywheel happening. Is that, am I hearing that the right way, or how is it?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree. It's like, I think some people jump right in and understand, we use data to back everything as far as what products we're going after. Even, we're always making innovations to the product, bringing something better to the market, listening to customer reviews, looking at customer reviews. What do they love? What do they don't love? So there, some people, it's like anything when I always say it can be like learning a new language, whether you have started a business before or not. So there's always, going to be hurdles and things that maybe might come really easy to you. Like Steven understands the numbers and the data so well. And I can come in and look at a product and be like, oh, we need to create it and make it
somehow
more
Chelsey
pretty.
knows if it's going to sell or not. I'm like, hey, the numbers look great. And then she's like, that's not going to sell. You need to make it like this color. It needs to be trendier. So we kind of combined our superpowers there. But sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, I think so. It is definitely more of that heavy lifting, understanding the data is going to work well. And then, of course, once your product is up and running, there is less maintenance to it. And it kind of depends on like what type of business are you wanting to create. A lot of our Rainmakers, when we first started, it was definitely a lot of our Rainmakers and us as well, just wanted to have extra money to pay their mortgage or have groceries or whatever that is. And now a lot of students that are coming in are very ambitious, have usually some kind of business experience in the past, or have always dreamed of starting a brand. And so they're in it for the long haul. They really want to create multiple products under one suite, sometimes taking even off Amazon strategies or having like a social media presence that goes along with. So when they're launching something, not only do we have Amazon's traffic, which is just there constantly, but also an audience that's ready to buy right away too. So I think now more than ever, people are building that brand and reinvesting back in the business to build something really great and almost have like an exit at the end, or selling the brand. So that's what a lot of our students are doing now, but you can totally go either direction.
So you carry multiple products, or do you focus on a small group of products, like even one or two products, or are you kind of
Yeah.
opening up to the world?
Yeah, most of our like students will launch, a suite of products. So you think about like that hobby you're into or you get into, what are all the things you buy? Like I know I got a mountain bike, so we don't sell the mountain bike, but we'll sell all the accessories, right? All the smaller stuff that's easier to ship. And so a lot of our students honestly do that. Like they kind of like a hobby they're into or, a season of life they're in. They'll kind of sell the accessory products around that and create it's smart business. Instead of having a random shop, you just have 3 to 5 products that all go together. And then when someone buys one product, they find your other one, and then sales just increase that way. So, we tend to see more people building brands. And when we first got started, it was just kind of like free game on Amazon. It's just launch anything, And now you definitely need to be a little more strategic. And so, again, people don't know what they're going to sell usually coming into our world, but once they start seeing the data, eventually something is going to kind of jump out at them. We're like, oh, I could see myself selling that. And it is helpful if it's something you know about. Like if you're into that hobby or niche, you just know how to serve that audience at a little higher level.
And that first product too is the first barrier. It's like once you get over understanding the data, understanding how Amazon works, the ins and outs, it's so much easier to launch that second and that third and fourth product. So we have students now who, even if they're still on product number 1, they can pull up and do product research so much faster and easier. And they might have a list going of what that product suite is going to be. They're just waiting either for more capital or selling out of a product or just, the timing of it all.
So give me a little bit of, insight into, for example, what are the qualities of an individual or what are the talents? I mean, you guys are young, good looking. Are you shooting video? You're doing content? Are you business savvy? Or, give me a little bit of background. If somebody was saying, well, this kind of sounds interesting, I want to dig into it more. What's some of the skill sets that somebody might need for a business endeavor like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of people come to us because they don't want to be on camera. So Amazon's nice because, most people actually don't know this, but 60% of the products you buy on Amazon are from small business owners. And so a lot of people think Amazon, big corporate thing, but they're really just businesses who are leveraging the system. Of course, we pay Amazon a fee, right, to get access to their traffic and their customers. But a lot of people like it because you could be totally faceless. You could be completely anonymous if you want to be. And so you don't need to be a social media star or anything like that. I would say just a little bit of like data analysis, kind of like you like to look at the numbers, but we have seen, people come in who totally hate that. And they just are like, all right, I'll just either get through this, or we also have a service where we can find their first product for them. Like, hey, here's 2 products that meet the metrics, choose one and just run with it. So, people find their strengths in there, but really it's pretty wild. When you look back, I was kind of doing a post in our community. I was just showing people the jobs on like Indeed that they could literally go get based on what they learned from the program and how much those jobs paid. I'm like, hey, you probably don't want one of these jobs because you can make more as an entrepreneur. But it's like you learn product development, you learn manufacturing, you learn how to manage a photographer who's going to take those photos, how to do SEO. Like it's just like very online good skill sets to learn. And so we really have all different skills come in. I would say the one, like probably the one metric we see through the most successful case studies is just they're driven. They're driven individuals. They get into something and they're kind of like, I'm going to do this. Like they just have that another level of mindset. I know you guys are huge mindset believers. Like it just, you see this when you see success, there's something behind it. And as we interview more and more of the students that are really those breakout stories, it's like, this isn't their first rodeo. Like they have driven history. Whether it might not be entrepreneurship, but it's like, I was this way in school and I overcame this in my life. And, there's just that edge.
I think entrepreneurship is playing that long game and knowing that, you're going to have really high highs and it's going to be like, wow, that launch, like totally, like we did such an amazing job. And then you're going to have moments where you're like, man, what is happening? I need to change something. I need to do some more research. And it's looking it's like those opportunities present themselves as an upgrade for you and your business, both in the way that you think, but also in your business and the potential revenue, like for you and your family. I was chatting with a friend who has a really incredible like coaching business. And she was just saying, as we closed out Q4 in our business, we found things of my team just wasn't running efficiently. And we really had to up level how we run our team. And that's always, she said, very like humbling and kind of discouraging, because you realize, wow, we haven't been as efficient, but how also exciting is it that now we found an area of growth that we're going to get to grow in. And that mindset right there that she described is so important for whatever business venture that you jump into, because you jump into it and you're excited and it's going good, and maybe you start to hit a few walls, but it's really like that long game of like, there is nothing that is a quick fix overnight. There is no magic pill. No matter how shiny or how whatever promise somebody is saying on the internet, like, here's the fastest way that I grew it. And of course, there always are those breakout stories where that appears to seem like it happened overnight, but it's work and it's dedication, and it is putting in time when you don't feel like it or sacrificing. And that is entrepreneurship. So I think having that mindset throughout is so important.
Well, I like what you've also indicated in the back is that you have a community, so that when somebody's going down and through this whole journey and down this path, there's some support in the background. I celebrated my 40th in 2024. I celebrated my 40th year in business.
Congratulations.
And I got multiple businesses. One of them celebrated its 40th anniversary. So, as we head into this now new year, we continue. But to your point is that, often I use the phrase, and whether I'm coaching or working with real estate investors or business owners, is that, ultimately it's all simple. It's just not easy. And that's a very common phrase, but it's just the truth. I'd like to go back a little bit. I don't know which is better of you to answer the question, but, something that sparked me is that, why do we do what we do? And ultimately what you had arrived at was you looked into the future and you said, given what our goals are, what our lifestyle vision is, and what we want, and that might be family or living conditions or where you live, geographically, you had a vision that you were working backwards from, and you said, well, how are we going to achieve that? What we're doing doesn't really align with, we love what we do, we're great at photography, weddings are kind of fun, but at some point it becomes, this isn't going to support what we're doing. I'm sure you arrived at that outcome. So often we say, well, what is your why? So for you, it sounds like your why was, we want family, we want lifestyle, and we want to be able to generate more income to support all of that. Then you started your entrepreneurial journey, so that's part one of the question. But the other part of that was, did you come out of the chute entrepreneurial, or was your family entrepreneurial? Like, how did you get those entrepreneurial chops?
That's so good. I think it was very different. We'll answer that last question first, because I think it was different for both of us. So Stephen and I actually started dating pretty young in high school, and Stephen knew that he was going to become a film major in college and kind of go more of the freelancing route. While I was in school with a very stable career, I was actually going to school to become a speech therapist. And there's kind of a little bit of a joking thing that would go on between our families, like, haha, Chelsea's, essentially going to be the sugar mama, and Stephen will just go like experiment and do whatever he wanted. And Stephen had a lot of fun in college and got to do all these like video production. And I felt like I was slaving away at like learning science to understand how your throat and ears worked in speech. And so I definitely was so afraid to go to risk anything. Essentially, I wanted the stable income. I'd seen my dad try and start his own business and way undercharge and undervalue his services. And so he couldn't sustain that, past a certain point. And so I hadn't seen any successful entrepreneurs. I just thought you had to be a starving artist. That's truly what I believed. And so it wasn't until meeting Steven and following a couple other photographers at the time that were further along in business than we were, seeing that, wow, they could actually do it together and they weren't starving. So I think that opened my eyes. But from the beginning, and even now, like stability and those things, I'm much more, I don't jump out at risk as quickly as Steven does. And I've gained that muscle. I've worked it enough where I can see something and be like, let's go for it. Like moving to where we just moved to, it is a big risk, but we both made that together. But I've worked that muscle over time. Whereas I think Steven had a little bit more of that entrepreneur bent, risk taking from the very beginning, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the one area that I let fear get in the way was actually getting married. And we got engaged and like everything's going, we had dated for 5 years. And I got freaked out, and like usually I'm the risk taker. I'm like hey, jump off the cliff, learn to fly guy. But for something about it, we had a counselor at the time. She was kind of like fear-based and kind of like, what if this, what if that?
Yeah.
I just got freaked out, set a date. We sent out save the dates. And I called off the wedding. Like this is like, I don't know, 2 months before the wedding. Bad move from Steven, bad move. But what this really did and why I'm telling this story is because just like an entrepreneur, you have these moments of like, everything's going to fail, right? Like this is not going to work out. We worked 5 years on this relationship and you're just throwing it in the trash, right? But we really decided to go through it together. And we went to a different counselor. We started going through a marriage course, like on just like, it was called Defining the Relationship. And it was like, at the beginning, they're like, you're either going to stay together forever or we're going to break you up, And they did this exercise where you looked into the future and you were like, where do we want to go with where do I want to go with my life? And we both did this exercise separate and kind of came up with like a mission statement of like, this is where I see myself in the rocking chair and looking back, here's the impact I made. And we did this separately. And then we brought our statements together and they were just eerily similar, and that's how we knew like we could make it, And so with Rainmakers and even the wedding business, anything we've done together, it's still pointing towards that thing. It's not exactly that thing, but it's like, it's pointing towards that. It's serving other people. It's creating transformation. It's making impact in the world. It's storytelling, being creative. These are all core things that have always been part of our businesses. And so when we started the Rainmaker Family, we really didn't know it would be what it is, And when we started to see the impact that it was having in people's lives and getting Christmas cards in the mail, like, we were able to buy our dream home. We were able to retire my husband. We were able to travel the world because of you guys. It was like that piece we loved about weddings, the legacy piece of like, this is cool. We get to take a picture that lives on for a long time, impacts his family. It was such a bigger impact that we saw we could make through Rainmakers. And that gave us, I think, the faith to like step fully into it and go, let's really build this thing.
It's interesting that, within our, my wife, Stephanie, is a world and Olympic class mental performance coach, but she really coaches a lot of couples. And in the nature of the sport that she's in right now, it's figure skating and it's dance. She actually works with the U.S. Olympic dance team, amongst many. I think she's got 14 countries that she works with. The point is that they're couples and they're not, they're couples that skate together. Some of them are in relationship, as in a romantic relationship, even the occasional marriage, but they're couples they're two people working together. But one of the things that empowers is that, are they sharing common values? And what you just described is that what you and Chelsey have come to is that you share common values. That really is what the foundation of any great relationship is built on. Do we align with what it is that we're trying to, our purpose, our mission, if you will, is one of those things. And you both are really, when I'm listening to your speaking, what lights you up is being a contribution, making a difference in other people's lives, and feeling the impact that you can have on others by, coaching and teaching and having them learn how to build their own businesses and grow within their family dynamic, achieve their why. I think that's awesome. And so no surprise that you guys are still hanging out together. How is it, let's go back and kind of go a little bit deeper in what have you learned working together as a couple? Now, Stephanie and I have literally worked together for almost 40 years now. as partners. She owns business, I own businesses, we collectively own, like, we're very entrepreneurial in spirit. You're sharing stories about, some days it's feast, other days it's famine, but even years later, we're still seeing the challenges that any business faces on an ongoing basis. But one of the things that we've had to learn to do and discussed a lot is, how do we work together without overlap, getting in each other's ways? What are some of the things that you've learned?
That's so good. I think a couple of things come to mind right away is, I think from the beginning, I focused so heavily when we were newly married, first business right at the gate. I focused so much on our differences and how much you're so different than me. If only you would come to the dark side and be just like me. And I quickly realized there's so much beauty in being so different and having different skills. And so really focusing on those, especially if you're in business as a couple or you have a business partner, whatever, just finding out, or team members, finding out what your strengths are and what you're really good at that only you can do. Stephen is brilliant at marketing, at strategy. I come in with more of heart and leadership, and I have a really good pulse on our team and our company culture. And so we really try and stay in those in our lanes of genius, and then outsource the things that we're not good, or have mentorship and people speaking into the areas that we need to grow in. So I think focusing on that for sure. I also think understanding what season you're in as well. I think even in this last 6 months, we just made a huge life transition. We moved to a completely different area. And so for me as a wife and a mom, our home and setting that up and establishing rhythms with our boys and school and checking in on them, I have almost taken a little bit of a backseat with our business and let Stephen have more of the reins in certain things, because we're in this season of transition. So I think understanding the season that you're in and the capacity that you had. I didn't have as much capacity to run alongside Stephen in the business in the last 6 months than I have, 6 months prior. And at first I was really ashamed of that and was like, oh no, is the team expecting this of me? And so we just had an honest conversation with our leadership team and letting them know what was happening, but also giving myself the grace of like, this is really important, especially if we're a family first business, if our kids are young, that's so important to us right now. And then, of course, I'm sure 6 months a year, like when we're more settled in and have those routines down, I'll step back in. But just knowing that season 2 that you're in, and giving yourself grace for whatever that's supposed to look like.
I love that. It is interesting, right? Is to honor our pace and to be able to kind of go with ebb and flow. And, you stated a kind of a classic mom attitude, right? That feeling of guilt. First it's like feeling guilty because you're not spending enough time with the kids, and then you're feeling guilty because you've got this business going on that you're not, and then that is always, that's kind of a classic mom view of the world, because that is part of your, I think it's part of mom's hardwiring. It's a genetic predisposition. That's my story around it. But you said something that I think is really interesting to not step over. And in business, because I think it's one of the most important parts of business when you have a team, is creating the right culture, and then taking a stand for that culture, because that's what allows the right people to show up. I lead with all my businesses. I try and lead with the conversation of culture, so that when my general manager or my managers are interviewing somebody, they really do have a strong context for, within that interview process, this is our culture. Does that person fit within the culture? Do we share common values, or are we going to be, bumping up against beliefs or a different set of values? And that doesn't work. So in your case, I'm sure that there wasn't a lot of pushback from your team. And you can totally say no, not the case at all. But here's my own journey over years working with staff, that we've created the right culture, the right environment, is that somebody on your team, or many, are waiting for you to get the hell out of the way. And when these opportunities show up, all of a sudden that person that you empower just hits it out of the park.
Yeah.
And you go, gosh, why didn't we do this sooner? They're awesome, right? And
Yeah.
then, you get to relax. So I don't know if any of that rings
That's so
true
true.
for you, but
Every time we have a baby, like the business levels up because we take a month or 2 months off, from the business, and everyone they just tear up and they're like, "Wow, okay, we didn't know you could do that, but that was awesome. You just keep doing that when we come back, and then we have to level up too." So that's our strategy for growing the business. Keep having babies, and then we take time off, and then everyone levels up.
Chelsea's going, okay, at some point we're stopping. Okay, so I love all that. But how did you come to the name Rainmaker? Like, what is that name meaning for you and your business model?
Yeah, I feel like I just pulled this name out of a hat, but the deeper we've kind of gone with it, the more it's just really made sense. And we used a lot of gardening analogies with our moms because, you only have so much time, and time, is almost like nutrients going to a garden. And really our story was doing a million different side hustles. We were sending our nutrients to so many different, let's call it pumpkins. There's this analogy from the Pumpkin Plan, this book that talks about you just try to grow 100 pumpkins. They're all going to grow one size. But if you want to grow that award-winning pumpkin, you really need to cut off vines, right? And send all your nutrients to that one thing. And so really that was our story of, we call it trimming the vine, right? You cut back, you cut some things out, you focus. And that's really what allowed us to grow this award-winning pumpkin, right? Rainmaker Family. And so we do a lot of using nature like that to give analogies to our moms, like, hey, let's take care of your schedule. Let's create a dream week for you. Let's help you achieve balance, even when that looks like being with the family 5 days and working a couple days, right? Like that might be balance for you, right, in this season. So Rainmakers is really like, I think it came from the phrase "make it rain," right? It's just like, hey, let's make it rain. But it's really like, we're not waiting around, for the rain to come. We're going to make it. We're going to do the things that not everyone's doing to create results that not anyone's seeing.
Well, I'm always reminded, that, and I love that story, by the way, because it really is, there's a foundational quote that I use often, which is, if more knowledge was the answer, we'd all be billionaires with six packs. And what your analogy does is that, and the metaphor, the context, is it provides context for what it is that you're providing in terms of education, in terms of the business model, in terms of what can be achieved. And when you frame things and give it context, and so you chose Rainmaker, and I love that, by the way. I think it doesn't matter so much what it is, it's just that there is something that you can kind of wrap your narrative around, give people something to step into and get behind. And that's really, that is, again, the context is so much, or it's as important, I'll say, as the education or the information. And if you don't have a context for it, which you do, that's really what supports others in their success. And am I in line with what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, 100%. I feel like such a huge piece of what we do is help people take on a new identity, or reignite an old identity. A lot of our moms, they kind of lost themselves in motherhood. They loved being a mom, loved raising their kids, and now their kids go off to college and they're like, who am I? I was in this corporate career, I was this creative artist, and I kind of lost that part of myself. And so giving them a word to step into, like, I'm a rainmaker, it kind of helps them make that identity shift. And we send them capes, we call it, which is just a t-shirt. But it's just like, you put this cape on, you become a rainmaker, and it helps them really, I think, start to act like it, right? Like, this isn't just a side hustle. I'm going to actually block time in my calendar. I'm going to get the nanny. I'm going to, whatever it takes to like build this thing. I think having that identity to step into is really helpful. Whether it's you're an entrepreneur, you're an investor, you're a rainmaker, whatever that is, it's just a helpful thing for the mindset.
Yeah, I think it's, like I said, I think it's brilliant. I think, but it goes back to even, the fact that your primary avatar is, moms. And I think it's a great market because moms go through all the things that moms go through, and you've kind of focused on that, which then plays into even the context that you've set up for your, what you called your pumpkin story, or the, that I think it's important that, you have that level of focus. That is really kind of, I love the concept of it, but and to your point, I'm sure that you've got dads that are part of it, but it's ultimately, is it is it considered, or is it a side hustle for people, or is this, really, if you're going to make this work, you got to put a couple of years in real hard?
Yeah. There still is sometimes that people come in with a side hustle mindset, but I think if you have that, you treat it like a side hustle. But it really is. I mean, I would say most people are investing 10 to 20 hours a week in it as they're learning. I would probably treat it more like going to school on the side of your job. Like if you're going to go to college and get a couple extra credits on the side of working, is that a side hustle, or is it kind of like you're just devoting some time to it? So I think sometimes people come in thinking it's going to be a side hustle, and then they like really catch the fire too, because it can be. You can launch a couple products, you could keep the inventory in stock, you could be like, I'm not scaling this, I just want to maintain it, and it can really be that side hustle. But a lot of people that come into our world, I'd say 80% are more the aspirational. They taste that first, internet money, and they're like, let's scale this thing, put it all back in. I'm going to the moon. I want to sell the business in 3 years. So we see more of that where they end up investing more time because they love it.
So, I mean, when you look at the industry overall, when we look at e-commerce, and do you spend a lot of time as well? I mean, there's the doingness of operating your business, but as leaders within your Rainmaker community, are you always on the lookout for where e-commerce is going? Are you yourself getting guidance from coaches? Do you kind of look into the e-commerce world and, I don't know, you're watching Gary Vee or listening to Gary Vee talk about where he sees things going? He's one of those guys that kind of play in that space too. So how do you kind of make sure that you stay ahead of all of this so that you can, within your community, lead that community?
That's a great question. Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely the dreamer and the I love geeking out on the latest thing. So you'll catch me during Saturday morning cartoons, like building some AI no code software. I want to learn, so I'm just a ever learner. So that keeps me, I think, a little bit around the corner of what's coming down the pipeline, is just always wanting to learn something new. I'm always going through a course. We also do a lot of masterminds ourselves. We don't tell people to invest in our program without investing in programs ourselves. So at least $150,000 a year we're putting into continuing our education, being in rooms where, we're having these bigger conversations, what's going down. And I think that's huge in entrepreneurship. You see a lot of businesses that don't keep looking at the future, they end up dying, right? Sears and Roebuck, is that's how it was said. They were super innovative. They started shipping the catalogs, right? They were shipping the catalogs to people's homes, right? So that was really innovative. Wow. Put a catalog in every home. People can shop from home. But then when online came on the scene, like Amazon and some of these things, they didn't keep looking forward. They were like, oh no, we got the catalog, right? And then they got a business because of it. So I think you always in entrepreneurship need to be looking ahead, not out of fear, but just out of okay, we got to be willing to pivot if something's happening. And right now I think that's AI. So we're just learning a lot about AI and how's this going to affect things. We don't know. I think it's going to make things easier, but I think if we're not learning it, we might get left behind.
100%. That it's just, it is what is. It's now the thing, and it's going to be, not unlike the internet when it fired up. It's just in early stages, and it'll just become it already is an integrated part of my own operations, even what my team is using. And it's just early days. I mean, really
pretty wild.
Just coming out of the gate. Now, as a dynamic couple, the dynamic duo of Chelsey and Stephen, is there one of you that is more operationally minded? Because it's interesting that you like the data, Stephen, and you kind of like the analysis of things, but you're also got this whole creative side of you. So who takes the lead operationally, for example, and make sure that your accounting is in place and the reporting structure is in place and the HR is in place, or whatever you got going on? Who's kind of the brains behind the ops?
It's funny. We were on another business podcast, and he was really drilling into this question. He's like, "How did you really do it?" And we were like, "I don't know. We're very I feel like it's totally a miracle, honestly, that we're here, Patrick, because I am very much." It'll work out. I don't need to look at the numbers. I was like that for so many years. We finally hired a director of finance this year, and multiple 8-figure business. And so I feel like there's been a lot of just miraculous grace in our journey, because I am very creative. I'm really good at systems. and creating a system that'll last a long time, and thinking big about how to set up a system. But I feel like even the people in our organization, I feel like it's just miraculous, the type of people that have come to us to really take things and take it beyond where I could. So I'm very much the visionary, but I love to geek out on systems and operations. I'm not as great at like follow through and like holding people accountable. So that's why I have a really great executive assistant. I have, a chief revenue officer that really, will crack the whip, and then Chelsey is like, I feel like she's like our secret weapon on like, just like company culture. She just got the intuition. She's like, hey, you should check in with that person. And I check in with them, and sure enough, there's something crazy happening that like, if I had just left that, like, and didn't have a conversation around it, like she brings, I think the mother to the organization, which we really need. And then she also brings a lot of the creativity as well of like, oh, that's not going to work. Don't say this, say this. Like she's really the avatar, right, that we're trying to serve. And so, it's a good combo, but I'm definitely the more in the weeds of the business right now. And then Chelsey, she's like really she's the face. I'm kind of like the operations behind the scenes. So she's in all the ads. She'll be on the website. She's talking with me on podcasts and things like that. But I'm definitely the nerd behind the scenes pulling some of the levers.
Again, I think goes back to those understanding the season. Like we have 2 young kids, and just understanding that for us, like this season is only going to be here for so long. And I'm super ambitious, and sometimes it's hard for me to take a step back from work or want to be doing more, but just also realizing this is this short little window, and I have all these skills that could be contributed in this way, but we are also very intentional in choosing what I'm doing in the days that I'm working and the tasks that I'm doing. So I could see in the future coming alongside and being more operational, but from the beginning, again, specifically with Rainmaker, Stephen was always kind of like running the operational side of things and then stepping in when needed. And that's just how it's been able to continue. So,
I love it. Now, when we're talking e-commerce, but do you have a sticks and mortar kind of building? Do you have an office? How do you what does your team all exist in one place? What do you do?
Been virtual. Like all online. We work from home. I finally got a door on my office. For a while, the boys, we have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. They just run in all the time. But everyone's virtual. We're all over the world. We have a team in the Philippines, people in Africa, a lot of US based, but it's pretty wild. Like you never had an office, and it was kind of like in the early days, it just made sense because like, oh, this is a way we can save money. And then with COVID, it was kind of like everyone's used to working online. So we just always done it remote like that. And there's nuances to that, but it's worked.
So if you kind of reflect on your journey, is there one or two kind of, I'll call it fork in the road moments for the business or for where you guys took it to? One of those coincidental things perhaps, or something that shifted and you go, and that you can identify that fork in the road moment where it took a decision, it took a shift of thinking. Anything that stands out for you in that regard?
Yeah, I think this is like getting a little like, theoretical. Okay. So I have science to back this up, but I feel like whatever impact you're making in the world or trying to really go after, whatever that mission is, I do feel like you're tested on those things almost. Like it's like you have to I think of it like a video game. If you're going to win the video game, you got to like conquer bosses. And if the video game, let's say, I'm just making this up, like we're playing a game, let's say, and we're trying to conquer poverty in people's lives. Oftentimes the thing that we've had to overcome is like being willing to put all our money on the line. And I believe that gives you authority to really impart that to other people because you've actually been through it. Right. And so in our business, there's been so many moments where we've had to put it all on the line almost and go like, all right, there's $200K in the bank account, which I know might sound a lot for some people, but when you have a $400,000 overhead every month, that's not a lot. And you're like, and we have a credit card that has a $200,000 limit. Let's put $400,000 on advertising for this next launch and like basically risk it all. And like that didn't start at that level. That started with $2,000. Like our first launch we did when we really felt like, okay, let's get this to the world, it was $2,000. And at the time that felt like putting it all on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just work that muscle and now it's $10,000 and now it's $25,000 and then it's $250,000. And it just feels like constantly we are having to almost like say, no, we still believe in this so much that we're willing to risk it all for the name of the mission.
Yeah.
And anytime we've done that, I would say not every time, but almost every time it has worked out in the end. There's been a couple flops where it's really hurt, where we risked it all and it really felt like, man, it didn't work. But I feel like that's the thing that we've had to continually do is kind of put it all on the line and kind of push all the chips in again. And I think when you see a lot of entrepreneurs that are making big impact in the world, they've often had a moment like that where they were tested in the thing that like they really said they believed, and it was like, were you willing to push it all in, you know? Yeah, so
well, I think
I'm not prescribing that to everyone, just like go risk it all. But,
well, I don't and I didn't hear it that way by the way, is that, ultimately what you said is, that you exercised that muscle and you started, with a couple of grand, and that was a lot of money back then, but ultimately you kept using that muscle and it got stronger, it grew stronger, you gained confidence. And that's really ultimately what it's about. And of course, I often use the phrase that, confidence is rarely owned. It's most often borrowed. And you can borrow that from your significant other, that maybe Chelsey was that part of collectively that you gave each other confidence, but having some wins along the way. And, even you as coaches and, individuals who are teaching others to follow this journey, back to one of the things that you pointed out earlier, is that you've been there, you've done it. And so people can borrow the confidence from you that they need to actually keep and moving forward and building their business. And with somebody who's been there, done that, that is always all these quotes and analogies and metaphors and memes, we know that we can build business on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. And that really is a winning formula anytime. And you guys are doing that and have done that and continue to do that. But I just love that you guys have pointed out again is that, you're not going all in up front, but you are in fact pushing yourself to use that muscle to lift a little extra weight, thinking that you might not be able to lift it, but you do, and you pull it off. And then you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief and go, hey, it worked. And what did I learn? And then you continue to move forward. So I love 100%. That. So, we've kind of been, I don't want to, I'm not in a hurry to close this conversation out, but I would like to, at this point, ask you, is there some ground that we haven't covered that you would like to share with the audience that something I want to make sure that the audience hears this? Is there any of those kind of points that you want to make, Chelsey or Stephen?
Anything that's coming to mind, man, I'm just, I think I've been so grateful for entrepreneurship and who we have become in the process. And I think it's one of the best tools to bring transformation to not only for you, but for your family as well. And I think entrepreneurship, whether it's real estate investing or e-commerce or selling, something, a coaching program off of Instagram, whatever it is, like being willing to pivot and change and try something new and step out and not stay comfortable. I think there's so many people who just, and nothing against this. We were just doing a podcast with somebody who talked about the age of 50, she decided to make a change and start doing real estate investing. And I'm just like, that's so incredible to do something, like to step out with faith and not let fear hold you back. And how many times do we let fear, or even just like the negative spiral of like, this is going to go bad, and then this and this, and then you just go in this direction and it does nothing for you. It creates no fruit or gives you any result or even the peace of mind. And so I just think what a cool thing that entrepreneurship and this podcast can bring to so many, whether it's a mindset little snippet from you and your wife, or just having a guest on to just encourage somebody wherever they're at in the journey. That's why I love podcasting and hearing people's stories, because it's like, wow, I see myself in them, or I see my business, a few years ahead or a few years behind. And that's the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship, is the way that it creates impact, not only in your finances, but in that overflow of who you are and how you show up for yourself, the ones that you love, your family.
Fantastic. Stephen, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I think she said it super well, so just an encouragement to your audience. I think you're listening to the show, you're probably on the right track. And I think that as we look back on entrepreneurship, I see so much convergence that nothing was really wasted. Even the spaghetti years where I was throwing this against the wall, throwing that against the wall, all those little skill sets converged, in the thing that now we're doing. And the thing we're doing now might not be the thing we're doing forever, but it's going to converge into that, And so I think if you have that kind of abundant mindset of, I'm just playing a game here and I'm having fun with it and I'm learning as I go, those skill sets really do compound and converge, and nothing really is wasted.
I get a question for you, and in your own observation, perhaps, is that, there's a part of what you're saying, and this I think holds true, but what's your experience is that when you're working with clients that you're ultimately coaching, providing the guidance, is that you have to believe in yourself. At some level, there has to be belief in yourself that you can pull it off. And it's always helpful to have somebody behind you going, you got this. It's interesting. You got this. Those 3 words are so powerful, even though, somebody's just using it to kind of encourage you. You got this. They're powerful words, aren't they? So, there's a lot about believing in yourself. And ultimately, you came to the conclusion that you have to believe in yourself. And sometimes you question it, but you forge ahead anyways with that belief. And then there was another part, Chelsey, that I think is so important for listeners. Within the podcast, I always say, seemingly ordinary, you have achieved extraordinary, and you are certainly qualified in that world. The idea behind the Everyday Millionaire podcast is, if they can do it, gosh, I can do it. Here's this young couple with a couple of kids just trying to figure shit out, and they're figuring it out, and they keep going because they have the encouragement of each other, but at some level they believe in themselves. But something that you said that it's part of my own kind of foundation in terms of who I am as a person, but as in my own coaching, is that it's about the person you need to become to achieve the result. And as much as we look and say, well, that's the goal, that's what the outcome is, you have to step back from that always, I think, and ask yourself some fundamental question is, who do I need to become to achieve that? What are the qualities that I need to arrive at that outcome? And if you pre-plan it, I think it's, I don't know, the story I tell myself, and I believe it, is that if you pre-plan that thought process, you then are asking yourself a different question. When you're saying no, when you're getting out of bed in the morning and going, oh, and you don't want to do it, maybe the conversation you're having with yourself is, does the person that is trying to achieve my goal, are they going to struggle to get out of bed? They may, but do they get out of bed anyways? Yes is the answer to that question. So these are all parts of our own dynamic of who we have to become to achieve an outcome. So I don't know if you want to expand on that thought process, if you got anything that you would add to that thought process.
I've seen that so much. And you see the awards on the wall if you're watching on YouTube. Like, I love a big, let's get the award, let's hit the milestone, let's hit the 7-figure, 8-figure, like whatever that next thing is. But I think what I love more is what exactly you said, because the shift that I had to make personally to go from a 7-figure business to an 8-figure business, that was so much more valuable than actually the outcome. Like at scale, you're not even making as much profit, sometimes. And so really, I loved the transformation of who I had to become as a leader, how we had to change the organization, what we had to learn in that process. So I think you are spot on that of making it less but more about the process.
Mm-hmm.
As a couple, do you see those qualities within you? Like I look at Stephanie, and of course, we've been together over 30 years, and I've watched her evolution and how she shows up as, literally world-class, Olympic class, smart, articulate. And I've really admired watching her grow. And I know she would say the same of me. Do you guys see that within yourselves as well? Is, supporting each other in your own growth, if you will, and even Chelsey, you as a mom. I mean, that's like, how do you be an amazing mom? What does the amazing mom mean to you? And how do you show up in that regard? And that's a different conversation. But do you see that within yourselves, that own development? Do you guys have those kinds of conversations?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm like, I'm not the same person when I started out, or every year, or I mean, I feel like there's been so much growth and change for us in the last year, 6 months, making big decisions, changing things in our organization, changing, having a business in the height of an election for us, like what that has brought up, and how you pivot and change when Facebook ads are crazy expensive, and how do you create culture in your company when, the world is blasting this type of news stuff, or how do you keep your cool, So yeah, I feel like I'm constantly, I think as driven individuals too, which are most entrepreneurs wanting to do something different, we almost forget at least for me personally, like you forget how what you are doing is so sometimes not common, and you almost like don't realize the full, I guess, like impact, or just what you actually have accomplished. You get around entrepreneurs, and oftentimes I think it's about solving the next problem, or how can we mastermind, how can we continue to grow and evolve. And I love that growth mindset, and not everybody has it for sure. So it is refreshing to be around. But at the same time, with that growth mindset, you often aren't looking back as often and being like, wow, like even just a week ago, like look how I transformed, or a month ago or a year ago, like look what we've been able to do. And so I think there's beauty in looking back in the back seat and being like, wow, look at what we did, especially as driven entrepreneurs.
I love it. I love it. You guys are definitely real shining lights, and something that I hope will, and I'm sure will, inspire others to take a look at how they show up and what they're doing in business. So you've been very generous with your time. I appreciate it. I want to wind down. I always try to have a little bit of fun winding down with some rapid fire questions that are not so rapid, but we're going to take it on. And I have to say, I've never done it with two people before, so I think it's going to be really fun.
Awesome.
So first and foremost, this is an easy one. I'd be interested, are you Apple or Android?
Ooh, Apple.
Yes, definitely Apple. And the longer story with that is when Steven and I were dating, Steven's mom jokingly said, like, basically, we'll disown you unless you get Apple products. Because I was just whatever my parents had. It wasn't hardcore.
My family is like hardcore Apple from, like, I grew up with Apple, with the old, like original, so they just got into it really early. And I just was raised in that. So,
well, and hopefully they bought a lot of Apple stock.
I wish they did. I don't know. They just bought the computers. I'm like, oh man.
I've got a partner who's hardcore Apple. He actually converted me to Apple. I just wasn't making a big deal of it. That was a few years ago. Now I'm totally in the Apple ecosystem. I don't know if that's good or bad, but anyways, it's all technology, and I got too many phones over the years. So, favorite movie? Do you have one?
I don't know if I do. I wonder if Steven does.
I was a film major, so I feel like I have to give you really creative, whatever Kubrick film or something. I like kind of the twists and the turns. Yeah. I like Inception, or
Sixth Sense would be a good twist.
Yeah, something that's kind of keeps you on the edge of your toes. Good cinematography. Arrival was another one that was recently I watched. That was pretty good. Or Interstellar. I feel like I'm naming space movies. So that kind of gives you my flavor.
one of the best answers that I've gotten a couple of times from somebody that I asked that question, and they go, "Whatever the kids are watching." So, my favorite movie.
For film school, I had to write an essay to apply what was my favorite movie, and I think I put Big Fish on there. And I didn't know this at the time, but one of the teachers like worked on that movie. So I think that got me some kudos, like I like got some brownie points and got in. So
well played. Are you music files? Do you have a favorite band, favorite tune?
oh man, I mean, we have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So right now it's like Rafi and like, I've been working on the railroad and
Yeah, sure. All those good ones.
I think when we listen to music, we just like calming, classical, peaceful.
Not kids music. So if we're listening, just like instrumental, no words. Yeah.
Awesome. And if there is a God, what do you want to hear somebody say? What do you want to hear God say when you get to the gates?
That's good. Yeah, we believe there is a God, and I think He wants to do good work through us. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, God, do this, God, do that," and I think He's like, "Wait, I put you here to do that." And so I think something that I would hope to hear is, "Well done." You took those ideas I gave you and actually stewarded them and multiplied them, right? And helped other people have those ideas too. So I think that's what I'd love to hear.
Yeah, awesome. Is there a book that is your kind of stands out as one of a pivotal book or one that you like to share aside from your own, which is a great book, by the way?
Oh man, I feel like I always go like the last year. I feel like the last year most impactful book, probably 10x is easier than 2x.
Okay.
Or Buy Back Your Time. Both of those. Benjamin Hardy, all those books. 10x is easier than 2x. Gap in the Gain. That whole series is just so good. But 10x is easier than 2x really leveled us up in business. Yeah. And then Buy Back Your Time, very similar concept of hiring team and really leveling up in that way. Those have been huge in the business side of things.
Yeah, definitely.
Benjamin Hardy, I've followed his career for many years when he was just kind of starting out, and he's gone on to do some great thing. I think his partnership with Dan Sullivan was a great move. Gap in the Gain, I've had my whole team read it. I think it's a great book. It was one of the big standouts. Price of Tomorrow was another one by Jeff Booth, which I thought was really great. So that's kind of cool. And then final question for you is, what are you grateful for?
Yeah, so many things. I think what comes to mind, especially this season, is family time, good connection with friends, health. I think are some top ones. And honestly, we're just so grateful for our team, the people running alongside of us. We had a big team retreat in December, November, somewhere in there, I forget. And it was with our core leadership. And it was just like the things that our team, not just leadership, but everybody under them coming together and doing, it's just so cool. It's just one of those areas of like, when you get out of the way, like we talked about, just look at all the ripple effect that is happening. So I think we're so grateful for so many things, definitely family and those relationships and health, but just super grateful for our team. And it's been one of those years where we're just like leaning heavily on our team and seeing them rise to the occasion and lead so well. So that's just really cool to be a part of.
That's fantastic. I am so grateful to have had you join me as guests today. I am always inspired by my guests. When I look at, the world as it is today, which is very uncertain, crazy unfoldings that we don't know where it's all going, and you continue to be entrepreneurial in spirit. You have team, you pay staff, you are driving what's going on economically, you are part of a bigger picture in a crazy world that we're facing as we get into 2025 and beyond. So congratulations on that. I've learned a lot, so I'm again grateful for you. I'm always grateful for my family and my health, because of course without health nothing else matters. So thanks for joining me on the show today.
Thanks Patrick. It was awesome being here.
Thank you so much for having us.